As the Great Recession grinds on, deep inequalities in the United States are getting way deeper. Wall Street has returned to sky-high profits, while last year in this country, 50 million people struggled just to put food on the table. Now, for people of color in the U.S., the recession has been going on for years. In fact, for most of the last 4 decades, unemployment for African Americans has been running at more than twice the national average. But in the midst of this crisis, that gap is becoming a chasm. Poverty rates for blacks and Latinos have shot up to 3 times the average for whites. Now, with the first African American president in the White House, issues of race and the economy have never been as urgent nor as politically loaded. On this edition of Fault Lines, a public debate on the color of recession.
America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States of America.
Barack Obama has always preached a post-racial vision of the United States, and it has worked political magic.
And may God bless the United States of America.
But despite the symbolic victory of a black man in the White House, historic inequality is getting worse. Much worse in this economic crisis. Before the recession even began, for every dollar of wealth that the average white family held, African American families had 10 cents. Latinos had 5. And now, with unemployment soaring, a third of black families and 40% of Latinos are likely to fall out of the middle class and into poverty before the crisis is over. An entire generation of economic progress could be wiped out. So what is the administration doing?
My administration is working so hard not only to create and save jobs in the short term, not only to extend unemployment insurance and help for people who've lost their health care in this crisis, but to lay a new foundation for growth and prosperity that will put opportunity within the reach of not just African Americans, but all Americans. All Americans of every race, of every creed.
It's a colorblind approach. The White House doesn't even keep statistics on how its economic policies affect people of color. But no matter how safe Obama tries to play it on race, some of the loudest voices in America are saying stuff like this.
This president, I think, has exposed himself as a guy over and over and over again who has a deep-seated hatred for white people or the white culture. This guy is, I believe, a racist.
So far, most of the anger Obama has faced comes from the far right. But as the unemployment numbers climb and Wall Street parties like it's 1999, the debate is heating up within communities of color. The president is facing increasing pressure to do more about the color of recession, to help communities who are living in the United States of emergency. For a window into this debate, we brought together a panel and studio audience at the Night Studios of the Newseum in Washington. Jesse Jackson is a former presidential candidate and the founder of the Rainbow Push Coalition. Rosa Clemente is a hip-hop activist who ran for vice president on the Green Party ticket last year. Linda Chavez is the founder of the Center for Equal Opportunity, a conservative think tank devoted to issues of race. And Reverend Graylin Hagler is the national president of Ministers for Racial, Social, and Economic Justice. Thank you. An audience that knows how to respond to an applause sign. Thank you for that. Very kind. Welcome to the audience. Welcome to the panel. Welcome to this town hall discussion. Let's dive straight in with the very serious issue that we're confronting today. It's being called a silent depression for minorities in this country. And the fundamental question at this point in history is Obama letting down people of color in this country? Rosa.
Yeah, I think Obama has let down, particularly a population of people of color, black and brown people, working class people in this country.
Why?
Particularly,
how and why?
Well, there's no targeted program to deal with the situation that's happening, particularly to African American and Latino youth in this country when it comes to employment.
Linda.
I think a lot of people voted with a lot of hope. They thought there was going to be change, and I think what we've seen is that the solutions he is proffering are all of the old solutions: big government, higher taxes. That's going to do nothing but make the current economic recession worse, and the people that are going to hurt most from that are the people at the lowest socioeconomic class.
Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Because, I mean, on the one hand, he inherits 2 wars, and it remains to be seen how that will be managed. We can't say quite yet. The economic collapse on Wall Street, kind of Bush, Paulson extension. But now my concern is that it's time for stimulus too. If we have stabilized Wall Street, I'm not sure what that means for Goldman Sachs. It's now time to invest bottom up and not top down.
Reverend Hagler.
This is a couple of things. Is that we got to remember that we're talking about President Barack Obama, not King Barack Obama. And it's because if you're king, you can just order things, right? If you're president, you got to work with the legislative branch, and you also got to work through all that apparatus. And where you got, for example, in the health insurance debate, you got the health insurance companies pushing back, and the politicians scared to death. You got the Jim Becks trying to incite a race riot in this country based on,
I think you mean Glenn Beck.
Obama.
I think
whatever Beck is, I don't even remember his name. Right? That's how much he's worth to me.
I'm sorry, you have an overwhelming Democratic majority in the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. It is hardly a divided government.
I see a whole lot of diversity in the discussion from the Democratic Party, whether you're talking about the Blue Dogs or whatever. I mean, it doesn't function like the Republican Party and walk monolithic in step with everything Reagan or Bush got to say.
I agree with Mrs. Chavez. The problem is 2 parties, the damn Democrats. At least the Republicans, they say what they're going to do, they're going to do it. You may not like it, it may not be pretty, but they do it. The Democrats kowtow to everything. The problem is a 2-party system.
The thing is,
fundamental problem when it comes to democracy.
We forget we're still talking about the United States of America.
Which should be
where there is business sector that has to be satisfied, where there are people on the ground living in neighborhoods, workers that have to be satisfied. The fact is that we're trying to set Obama up as if he should somehow be our redeemer and our deliverer. The fact is, it was a great feat to get elected president of the United States. And there's a burden on his shoulders. And in fact, half of America, or more than that half of America, is sitting around and hoping and praying that the first black president of the United States fail. He will not fail.
But we do not hold the first black president of the United States to different standards than we would hold any other president.
No, you're holding him to more harder standards than we held Bush through. Right? We got somebody who can think, and we had somebody before him that was a moron.
All right, folks, all right.
Let's get back to the point of this discussion. And we talked about the recession. President Obama came in. He said, give me, Congress, give me the money that I'm going to take from hardworking Americans. I'm going to redistribute it. I'm going to stop the job loss in this country. I'm not only going to not see more jobs lost, I'm going to create or save 3 million jobs. Well, we've spent that money, and in fact, we haven't seen that
Linda,
job creation.
let me challenge you to put a proposal on the table. What do you think should be the focus of economic policy that will help all these people?
Put more money back in the pockets of individuals. Let individuals
you're talking
buy
about tax cuts.
That's right. That's by tax cuts. You put more money into the pockets of individuals, and for low-income people, you could even have a refundable tax credit. But you need to get individuals making decisions. That's how the free market works.
A third of that $787 billion stimulus package was already tax cuts. In fact, there have been so many tax cuts in this country that according to the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center, 47% of the households in the United States of America, 71 million, don't pay any federal taxes.
That was my point.
So you want to cut taxes further?
Well, because everybody said that's right, because poor people don't pay taxes. Wealthy people do. I think you have to cut taxes for the people who, in fact, create jobs. If you're a minimum age worker, you're not creating jobs. If you have money as a small business person, you can actually hire people if you have to pay less money to government.
We stimulated the economy top down rather than bottom up. There must be some happy medium there. Soon we had to stabilize the heart of our banking system. Those banks that got the bailout, they have now pushed homeowners out and locked students out. They got the money and they're not lending. and the bailout should have been linked to a lending reinvestment American policy. All you really can do now is to A, look at a faulty trade policy that keeps shipping jobs to cheap labor markets, 2, restructure loans and start repossessing homes, and 3, reduce student loan rate and make schools more attractive because they become more affordable.
So I have no problem with redistribution of wealth because the statistic goes that 10% of people in this country own over 85% of the wealth. That is not a human, that is inhumane in itself. And when I think about safety and I think about terror threats, I think about people not being able to get health care. I think about college students going into $125,000 worth of debt, being called the new indentured servitude in this country to get a degree that basically is worthless. We have people out here with doctors that can't get jobs. We have 66% of young people voted for Obama, then he should be putting 66 to 67% of his effort to support those young people through his policies.
Right,
and some of his policies around war do affect the color of recession.
Before we get back into the discussion of war, let me challenge you, Rosa, to put your policy proposal on the table because you've identified this problem. You say Obama should be paying more attention to young people, to people of color. How should he do it? How should the administration respond?
We need a fundamental end to capitalism in this country, and I don't care how it comes. I'm sorry, I don't, and maybe
Rosa,
that's
you're
too
not going to get that from the President of the United States.
Oh, but I'm not talking, and then the question now becomes, what do we do?
Okay.
President Obama will only do as much as he's pushed to do. As a community organizer, that's one thing he made very clear. So then where is the general strike in this country?
I want to forgive me, panel. I'm going to bring the audience into this because they've been making themselves known with their applause. Pass it back up. We'll have a cooperative audience moment here. Go ahead.
I would just like to say that speaking with Obama, I think he needs time, and we put him in there. The people still believe in him. Most people that I talk to still do. The government that we have currently wasn't created overnight. Yes, we elected him for his policies, but we're not giving his policy. We're not even giving him a chance to create policies.
Guys, anyone want to respond to that here? Yeah, right here.
For those of us who were paying attention, saw in advance that Obama was going to do what he has been, in fact, doing. When you surround yourself, and this word inherit that keeps being thrown around is unfairly put to him. You can't say he inherited something where he is bringing in people to advise him and be members of his cabinet who were part of the process of developing all these problems. So everything that he's doing is in fact predictable and leading us right back to what was established by the Economic Policy Institute in 2007 before this most recent crisis, where it said that black people in this country are in fact in a permanent recession.
All right, one of the things we got to remember when we talk about sort of job and job creation is that most of the manufacturing jobs have been exported overseas. Corporations have been allowed, in a sense, to address their bottom line, creating a whole class of people in this society that are the sultans called billionaires and millionaires or CEOs of corporations, right? So far separated from the masses of workers. So that's one thing we've done. We've exported manufacturing jobs. And in this economy, those companies that have begun to move back towards profitability find out that they are doing it on less workforce. And so there is no incentive to call back that workforce when you have making money in your current status on a reduced workforce, and in a sense have become very keen in terms of productivity.
The United States of America has been the job creation engine that has run the world economy. We created jobs under President Reagan, a huge, massive expansion of jobs. We created jobs under President Clinton. Yes, we are in a difficult time right now, but I will tell you that kind of wealth creation, the creation of jobs, doesn't come from Washington, D.C. It comes from men and women who take risks, who get education and get skills and go out there and create something that they can sell.
Everyone take a break. I just have to do one thing. Hold that thought. We got to take a break while this conversation is starting to heat up. We'll be back on Fault Lines in a minute. We're back on Fault Lines. We've been having a spirited discussion about the color of recession. Reverend Jesse Jackson, jump right back in.
We had to fight to end slavery. That was a struggle. We had to fight for women's rights. That was a struggle. For workers' right to organize, a struggle. Fight for basic right to vote, a struggle. So it's an ongoing, unfolding democracy, and I would say don't become detached from struggle because you cannot have a one election, one day joy and not do the interim work between elections.
We've talked about inherited legacies, structures of racism that have created deep disparities in society. Should we therefore have reparations? Yes. Going all the way back to slavery? And have structural programs that are explicitly recognized, health, education, housing, to mend that gap that has never been mended in this country?
Yes, we should have reparations.
I'm a supporter of
and one way to start with it is by paying off some of the student loans of folks who are descendants of slaves.
Well, Linda.
I am opposed to reparations. The idea of reparations, if you could find an actual victim of discrimination today and find the person who actually perpetrated that discrimination, then you can make a link. I mean, we've seen reparations work. Germany paid reparations to survivors of the Holocaust. The problem is that we are generations removed, and that many of the people who would be asked to pay those reparations weren't even in America at the time.
You repair for damages done. So after the slavery you had, Reconstruction was a commitment, and the Reconstruction was dishonored, for example. Affirmative action for women and people of color. You know, affirmative action is based upon documented evidence of gender discrimination and inequality, and racial inequality. Now, if you enforce those laws, they begin to repair damage and open up closed doors. And to me, right now, unenforced civil rights law is a big factor in the collapse, because we're losing too much talent because of lack of equal protection under the law.
Linda.
Well, first of all, we do enforce our civil rights laws. And in fact, I mean, the change that has been taking place in the United States in terms of racial divisions has been a sea change in my lifetime. You and I, Reverend Jackson, grew up at a very different time in American society than many of the people in this room, and than you did, Rosa. And in fact, I mean, I don't know how you can look at Barack Hussein Obama, the first African-American elected president of the United States, and act like we are still living in 1954. We're not.
We're not. It is midday in our politics, but midnight in our economy.
Can I speak to that?
And the question becomes, why is it so dark in our economy? In part because we have trade policies that betrayed the American worker. That's a big piece of it. Saying there was not a fair enforcement of law.
There's a very, very patient audience member here, and I'm concerned that he may just melt down here if we don't tell him.
Thank you very much. Look, I haven't heard the solution. I mean, what we need, of course, is a public spending policy in the African American, in the minority community, that focuses on green jobs, healthcare jobs, and manufacturing jobs, jobs that cannot be taken out of the country.
Reverend Hagler.
President Obama, on one hand, though, he needs to step up and demand that all of the lenders out there be willing to modify loans back to levels that are affordable, such as what NACA is doing on a voluntary private basis right now.
You will destroy the housing market.
It's already been destroyed by the greedy profiteers on Wall Street. It's already been destroyed.
Go ahead, Linda. Go ahead.
First of all, there's a lot of fault that Wall Street has to take in this blame. And Jesse, you might not appreciate this, but I might actually agree with you. I was not for those bailouts of some of those on Wall Street. You know, the thing about capitalism, one of the things that makes it so vibrant is that if you mess up, if you screw up, you fail.
Capitalism is a failure. And I'm going to say it. It's a failure. Well, it's a failure when in this country you have to negotiate health care. Health care is a human right. We should be on we should. And President Obama supported single payer before he became a senator. The question is, especially for younger people, why believe in capitalism at this point? They have bailed out the banks to trillions of dollars, bail out the people. Healthcare should be free. Education should be free.
Everything should be free. Exactly. Where is the money? Where is the money going to come from to pay for this? Oh, please. There's not enough money in Afghanistan.
Capitalism only works with checks and balances.
There you go.
And what protects the system from itself is regulation, checks and balances. And so what happened this last time was the banks were not regulated, the banks were greedy, and the Congress fell on its job.
Everybody was greedy.
Go ahead. Jump back in. You go ahead. One at a time, folks. Otherwise, the audience can't hear what you're saying.
When the A team plays B team, if the referees do not do their job, a game becomes a brawl. So in some sense, when the Congress did not do its oversight and allowed the banks to get out of control, the banks got what they want and they don't want what they got.
Reverend Hagler, bring us back to the point.
The issue is, I mean, in terms of the struggle around capitalism, obviously capitalism needs to be restructured just like we're restructuring home mortgages out there, because there's got to be some humanity that's brought back into it. There's always going to be trading and bartering. That's a part of the human dialogue with one another and the human commerce with each other. So there's always going to be that. One of the things I will say about Obama right now, President Obama, is this. He needs to stop acting like the crossing guard and need to learn how to act like the cop. And the crossing guard holds up a sign and says, please slow down. And if you want to keep on going, you keep on going. But the cop will lock you up. And basically, we have CEOs that need to be locked up, and somebody who was behind this mortgage scam need to be locked up and in jail, and that drives home a message for all time that you got to be moral and you got to be correct the way you respond with the American public.
Excuse me, Linda, I'm sorry, we are out of time. That was the end of the sermon for this week. But Reverend Hagler, thank you very much. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to the audience. I know you're frustrated. We could have kept going for a lot longer, but we will see you next time on Fault Lines.